Becoming a consistently productive writer is not about chance or being at the mercy of the literary muses. It's actually a process that involves developing a deeper understanding of yourself, an understanding that I hope this video will help cultivate. Using beans as a metaphor, which is a horrible visual aid for a video because they're very clattery and they're also very small and don't show up well on camera. But I think the metaphor actually does make sense, especially towards the end. This is a journey that all writers will go through. One of the biggest challenges in writing has nothing to do with plot or characters. It has to do with your own mind. Wrestling with the forces of distraction and motivation to just get you in front of your writing on a consistent basis is often one of the biggest challenges facing writers. That and semicolons. I'm still trying to figure those things out. The writers who are productive, the writers who work consistently and see projects through to the end, there's nothing special about them. They've just gone through this process. I myself am still working through this, and my recent experience has actually changed my perspective about this process in some crucial ways. Most people start writing due to excitement. An idea for a novel pops into their mind and they start writing in earnest. Everything feels great. While the process is unfamiliar and you may encounter some difficulty, your excitement for the idea will carry you some distance. I spent years at this stage. I would get excited about an idea for a novel, start work on it, but after a short time, the excitement would fade and I would eventually stop working on that project. The emotions that triggered me to work came and went, as emotions are known to do, and so I would give up. Writing purely based off of fleeting motivation like this is like harvesting beans off of wild plants. If you happen to find some plants with beans on them, then you get beans. But when those plants are not there, or you've harvested all of the beans off of them, then you get no beans. I should run the phrase "get no beans" through Urban Dictionary to make sure it doesn't mean something lewd. Now, I will say that if you manage to put pen to paper, you're actually further ahead than most people will ever get. A lot of people think about writing a novel but never end up actually writing anything. So even if you find yourself giving in after 5 or 10 pages, just remember that you are actually making progress through this process to becoming a productive writer. I think going through this frustrating period of having motivation strike and then it going away and you not really knowing how to overcome this, I think that's something that most people just have to go through. You have to experience it in order to get the understanding. This lack of progress will eventually become frustrating. If you really value being a writer but can only motivate yourself with emotion, you are unlikely to make much progress. You'll eventually notice something of a pattern. Sometimes the writing juices flow, and sometimes they don't. Sometimes there are plants with beans on them, and sometimes there isn't. After a while, you'll start to wonder if there's some way that you can game this system. This is when most people discover habits. Now, if you had asked me a year ago what the end point of this entire process was, I would have told you that it's habits. It's only recently that I've started to realize that habits aren't the end goal, but rather an important step along the way. Habits are one of the best ways to use the natural proclivities of the mind to your advantage. Doing something like writing when you aren't emotionally motivated to do it is very difficult. Habits help to circumvent that. Our brain naturally automates behaviors that are beneficial and frequently repeated. This automation reduces the effort required, which reduces the cost of getting the benefit. A habit will get you in front of your project on days when you don't feel like writing. Not every day will be amazingly productive, some will be harder than others, but having a habit will ensure that you are present on the days when things really flow. I have other videos that have walked through some of the writing habit formation process, but if the habit and mindset stuff that we're talking about today is something that interests you, you should check out my Your First Novel program, as it has an entire module on mindset and habits, along with all of the other things that you need in order to write a novel. I designed this course specifically for people who are struggling to get their first novel written, and in it I walk you through every step of the process, from conception of an idea to designing your plot and characters, and even down to the methods that you'll use to actually write and plan out your first draft. There are exercises at every step along the way to keep you on track and overcome common obstacles. If this is something that interests you, I invite you to check it out at the link in the video description. Habits are fantastic and will bring you a long way, but using habits doesn't really equate to mastering your own motivation. It's like returning to wild bean plants every year during the times that they are making beans. You are working within the bounds of the system and you have more reliable production of beans, but you're still at the mercy of that system. Your mind gives you a certain number of plants just like it gives you a certain amount of motivation. Habits let us work within those bounds, but we still aren't fully in control. You may have guessed where we're heading already with this metaphor. If you want the maximum number of beans, you shouldn't just take them off the plant and eat them. You should bury them in the ground and make your own bean plants. That's how you get the highest number of beans. The biggest lie that your mind will tell you is that you need to be motivated to work. It tells you that it will be more efficient to do it tomorrow, that you're too tired today and that tiredness will affect the writing, that it's best to save your writing for a time when you feel motivated, a time which never seems to be today and always seems to be tomorrow. It tells you ultimately that motivation comes before action. It tries to tell you that the only beans you'll ever get are on the plants that it decides to give you. The reality is you don't need habits. Habits are an important step, and they're often the way that people start to understand that they have some control over this system, but they don't put you in complete control. Your mind only wants you to do something if there's a reward. Picking beans off of a plant gives you a reward, but you don't need a reward. You can take action and delay gratification. Action precedes motivation. Action starts a cycle that will grow stronger than any habit can. If you think about it, it sounds kind of silly. The way that you get more beans is not to eat the beans you have, but rather bury those beans in the ground and then wait. That sounds really silly if you take a step back, but we all know that that's fundamentally true. As counterintuitive as it is, if you want to feel like writing more, you should write when you don't feel like it. The times when you aren't motivated, the times when it's painful, the times when every fiber of your being is telling you that you are too tired or too blocked or that your fingers are too sore. Remember, your mind can make plants. It's going to grow all kinds of weeds around the beans you just planted. It will tell you, see, this is not going to work. There's all these weeds here. But remember that you can pull those weeds out. The ground that grows the wild beans is the same ground that's growing the beans that you planted. You are the same writer whether you're motivated and energized or tired and unmotivated. The only difference is the thoughts your mind is choosing to send you. A lot of people let the weeds kill the beans that they planted because pulling weeds is hard. But the fact that it's hard is the point. So few people are able to write a great novel, let alone finish a novel, because of this. Because they have to rely on the motivation their mind decides to give them. Because they let weeds get in the way when they try to push back against it. This is what I'm starting to realize, even just in the last few months. Becoming a better writer, writing as much as you want to write, is not about waiting to be struck by some kind of bolt of creativity. It's about cleaning away the crap that gets in the way and planting something better. Habits get you part of the way there, and maybe you're one of those few lucky people who have plenty of motivation. But for most people, myself included, it's overcoming the weeds in your own garden and cultivating what it is that you want to cultivate that really matters. Stop thinking about your motivation as something you don't control. Stop listening to your mind when it gives you these excuses and tells you that you can't write. Because the reality is you have significantly more control than you think you do. And the only thing telling you you don't have control is your mind. So instead of eating the few precious beans that your mind gives you, why not try planting them and seeing what grows? Also, remember to water them, and you also have to do fertilizer, and it has to be at the right time of year, but you get my point. That's where the metaphor starts to fall apart a little bit. So there you have it. I'd love to know what you think of this video in the comments down below. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.